Kennel stress is an issue that's faced by animal shelters pretty much everywhere, and some animal shelters even use it as an excuse to kill otherwise perfectly healthy pets. Hi, this is Mike Fry with No Kill Learning, and today I'm going to talk a little about kennel stress causes and solutions. It should be noted that cage or confinement stress affects all kinds of animals, not just dogs. It also affects birds and cats and ferrets and pretty much any other species. But because the housing issues and behavioral issues are different, each animal species really deserves its own conversation. So today I'm going to be specifically talking about shelter dogs. And it should be noted that the stress for dogs begins the minute a dog enters an animal shelter, because most animal shelters have not been designed with dog behavior in mind. They're cold, sterile, noisy places where dogs are poked, prodded for vaccinations, for microchips, other medical tests. And they're frankly just scary places outside of their kennels oftentimes. And rarely has a dog's comfort or natural canine behaviors been accounted for in the design of most animal shelters. If you think about the typical dog kennels, they're really sort of all the same. No matter, specifically how attractive they are, they're generally rows upon rows of cold, hard, metal, concrete, noisy enclosures that keep dogs housed separately. It's a completely unnatural environment for dogs. The newer, more expensive kennels and shelters that are being built around the United States offer prettier versions of them, but I'm pretty sure that dogs don't care about the aesthetics too much, especially when they're stuck on a concrete floor with metal bars in front of them. The newer designs are really not much better than the older ones. And some of the issues are we're dealing with these highly social dogs that like to live collectively in packs, and then we force them to live in these separate little isolated boxes where they can see and hear and smell other dogs, but they can't get to them. There's this constant frustration related to that. And then the only access door into their kennel is on the very front of that, meaning that anyone that comes in that front door, that kennel, is in effect, trapping them. The dogs are trapped in the back of the kennel, and there's this constant parade of strange people and dogs coming by, and they never know which ones may or may not come through that front door to them. It's a horribly stressful environment. Think of, back to high school biology, fight or flight. It's triggered right there all day long, every day in your typical dog kennel. The place is noisy. A stress level from the noise alone affects people, but dogs' hearing is thousands of times more sensitive than ours. Listen to this soundtrack for a little bit. If we piped this into your office and played it louder, imagine by the end of the day you'd be ready to pull your hair out. And this isn't even a recording of a particularly noisy kennel. Add in the smells and the other strange stimulation that dogs experience in their kennels, and it's really just a terribly stressful place. It's stressful not just for the dogs, but all the people in the environment too. There's a small but growing number of animal shelters that are rethinking kennel design in creative and interesting ways, but that's a topic for another day. Today, I want to talk about what we can do for the dogs that are entering the vast majority of animal shelters in the United States that are poorly designed and that cause a great deal of kennel stress. Signs of kennel stress are varied, and they can range from very subtle to very extreme. On the most basic level, we see barking and pacing. We may see other types of stereotypies behavior like spinning or moving side to side. You'll hear whining, howling, or other vocalizations, yawning, panting, excessive shedding, growling, snapping, or other fear-based behaviors may also be included. lunging or even grabbing at or biting the, chain link fencing or bars on the front of the kennel can be part of that too. You'll see piloerection or the raising of the hackles on the back of the neck or further down the lumbar. You can, and those are all sort of excitable, energetic forms of kennel stress. On the other end of the spectrum, you can see everything from lethargy to depression and becoming very quiet, dogs being very aloof. Different dogs express kennel stress in a variety of different ways. There is no cookie cutter way to explain or express it. And the one thing I would like to make clear is that just because a dog isn't showing signs of kennel stress doesn't mean that they're not stressed. Pretty much if a dog is in a typical animal shelter today, they're experiencing some level of stress from being confined in their kennels. It should be noted that stress in shelter dogs has been clinically measured by drawing blood and detecting the levels of cortisol in their blood. Cortisol, a hormone produced during stress. The various enrichment techniques that we're going to talk about have also been clinically proven to reduce stress and to reduce cortisol in shelter dogs. Fundamentally, there's one word for what I'm going to be talking about, and that is enrichment. And the definition for enrichment is the action of improving or enhancing the quality or value of something. And in this case, we're going to be talking about improving or enhancing the quality or value of a dog's experience at a shelter. And it should be noted that while it's important to provide enrichment in a dog's kennel at a shelter, enrichment should be included in every area of every animal shelter's experience at a shelter, from the intake room to the adoption floor to the play yards, to the socialization rooms, to the adoption offices when the dogs are leaving the building. There's ways that we can improve and enhance an animal's experience through that entire process everywhere they exist in the building. But most importantly, what animals really need who are seriously suffering from kennel stress is time outside of their kennels, preferably outside of the shelter, because as I've already said, the shelter is not an ideal place for a dog. Outdoors in big play yards, that's a great place for dogs. Outdoors on leash walking, that's a great place for dogs. There's a whole host of other activities that you can do to engage with dogs in different ways as well. Most animal shelters have dog walking programs, and they are great. The more volunteers you can get to take those dogs out on leash, the better. Every minute of time those dogs can be out of the kennel and out of the shelter is, good news. If you can get a dog out a couple of times a day for an hour-long walk, that provides a lot of enrichment for those dogs and keeps them calmer in their kennels for the time that they remain in their kennels. And I'm not going to talk too much about walking because most all shelters have some form of walking program. If you've got a walking program, great, good for you. There's always room to add more, get more volunteers, more structure to the walking, making sure that more of the dogs can get out for longer periods of time. You can't do enough of it. I also encourage animal shelters to kick it up a notch, and for those really high drive, high energy, athletic dogs to invite runners to come and do running with their dogs. That's something that you need special training for, I believe, because you don't want to ever overwork or stress a dog, because you can physically stress them by running them too hard, too long. But think about bringing a trainer in who could train runners to run with your dogs in a safe and responsible way. That's a great way to burn off a lot of energy in a really short period of time. Taking that one step further, I even encourage biking with dogs. But before you grab a bike and a dog and head off, to the bike path, there's some things you really should know about before implementing a biking with shelter dog program. I've got an updated biking with shelter dog video coming out soon. Be sure to check it out. The short version is that biking can cause dogs to change in a whole host of ways, not only by burning off energy, but the fast movement of the bike causes them to refocus. So dogs that kind of have a disconnected, short attention span can learn to focus and pay attention and listen to their handlers better by using the bike. Really an amazing tool to use at an animal shelter. But again, don't just go grab a two-wheeled bike and a dog and head off, because that can be fairly dangerous. Watch for my Biking with Shelter Dogs video coming out soon. There are other activities that are not so active that are also really good. Basic doggy massage can be done in a socialization room, out in a play yard, in the dog's kennel, and it has been proven that dogs respond very well to all kinds of touch and massage. I've seen dramatic results using massage for really extreme behavior problem dogs, like puppy mill rescues that are terrified of people, who hate their kennels, who are difficult to get out of their kennels. They will respond very well to long periods of gentle touching massage very often. I highly recommend it. T-touch is a form of touching movement of dogs that's fairly structured. There's T-touch practitioners in most areas of the United States, and many of them are looking for dogs that they can use in their instruction. So I know of shelters where T-touch practitioners will bring all of their students out to a shelter and do T-touch on the dogs in the shelter. And it's an amazingly wonderful way to get the dogs calmed, get the dogs relaxed, while teaching people how to interact in a more constructive and positive way with pets. Obedience training. If you don't have a training program at your shelter, it's a great way to not only physically work them, but work a dog's mind and better prepare them, to leave the shelter with a new home, into a new home. And last but not least, one of the most important things you can do is implement playgroups. There's no excuse for not doing it. Amy Sadler from Dogs Playing for Life can come out with her crew to teach you how to introduce dogs together so that they can romp and play. Nothing burns off steam for a shelter dog than playing outdoors in a large enclosure with a lot of other dogs, where they can really just burn off steam. The fun thing about enrichment activities like these is that it's not just good for the dogs. It's also good for the staff and the volunteers. In my experience, there's no more fun activity for the staff and volunteers than participating in or supervising the dog playgroups. It's just a lot of fun to watch dogs run around and play. So implementing all of these programs helps retain volunteers, helps retain staff, it increases adoptions, and it makes the dog's life at the shelter happier all the way around. And because these enrichment activities have been clinically proven to reduce stress in shelter dogs, the question isn't whether or not you should do them. The question is, hey, what time is it and when can you get started? My name is Mike Fry with No Kill Learning, and I'm here to help. My contact information is at the link.